Do you find yourself searching, yearning for more, but you don't know what that more is? I'm Catherine Duncan, near-death survivor, mystic, and intuitive. Welcome to Everyday Awakening. On this podcast, I explore what it means to be alive. I help you awaken into your soul and live fully now. Through inspiring conversations, we'll dive into mindfulness, spirituality, and the transformative power of presence and living aligned with this universal energy. Together, we'll examine life's biggest questions, and I'll share practical wisdom to help you open your heart and awaken to the preciousness of being alive. Honored today to share with you my conversation with Ashley Turner. Ashley is a licensed psychotherapist, yoga meditation expert, and psychedelic therapist. Ashley's mission is to reshape the narrative around menopause and help women thrive during this powerful threshold of initiation. Her 360 approach focuses on the needs of the body, mind, psyche, and spirit. Menopause unexpectedly sent Ashley into a dark night of the soul. Her passion is helping you thrive and reclaim your power, voice, vitality, and vision in midlife and beyond. Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
So great to meet you. Well, we connected on social media, and I just immediately could sense your passion and was just really drawn to the work you're doing, and it's such a delight to meet you today. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. We finally did it.
Yeah. Well, congrats on your rich work that you're doing. Thought we could just dive in. Your work appears to it's the cornerstone of health and spirituality and consciousness. And I'm just curious to start with, what inspired you to walk this path to help others?
I think for me, it was definitely a choiceless choice. I love that term. It just was a calling and I couldn't not follow it. I found yoga shortly after college, right after college, and I started doing yoga and it really changed my life. It changed me from the inside out, and I could see these massive shifts in my personality. I probably didn't realize at the time that I was definitely struggling with some low-grade depression, insecurity coming out of college, and some core wounds of rejection, and just feeling, I had really lost my sense of self in my early 20s. And so when I found yoga, I was doing this physical practice, which I always loved, fitness and training, but then it was really healing me from the inside out. And so shortly after, I had been practicing several years quite consistently. And then it just one day in class, it just became clear, like, I want to start teaching this. I need to start sharing this. So I started teaching yoga. And then shortly after I started teaching, I could see the same breakthroughs happening in my students on the mat. And I really wanted to understand from a Western perspective or from a more modern psychological neuroscience perspective, what was happening in the practice, that it was creating such big shifts, in the mental and emotional health and even worldview and personality traits. So I went back to school and got my master's in psychology. And then I wrote my master's thesis on the integration of yoga and psychology, neuroscience, shadow work, and yoga. So that started it. And then eventually I launched extensive professional training for both yoga and mental health professionals, how to integrate the two and really anchor, this framework of psychology. The word psyche actually means soul. And so psychology is the logos of psyche, the study of the soul. And yoga has such a huge canon and a rich, very deep work on really all aspects of ourselves. And so this training was to help them integrate that and really anchor this in modern psychology. And then with menopause, I also was sent into, as you said, a dark night of the soul, and really in this deep, curious exploration of the psycho-spiritual journey that I was on in midlife and what was really going on in the depths of my psyche and my shadow and everything that was coming up, not to mention, the cultural norms and all the things that we battle as midlife women, along with the hormonal and physiological journey. So it's been a privilege, and psychedelics have been a huge part of my path all the way from the beginning of my yoga journey. So I'm really excited now to be working above board and starting to work with some biotech companies in psychedelic training and psychedelic sessions, and really helping facilitate this new emerging field.
And it is definitely an emerging field.
Yeah, it's thrilling. It's a really exciting time.
And I like how you bridge just whole person healing, mind, body, spirit, psyche. I mean,
Yeah.
that is how we heal. And I love hearing how you shared that it came through your yoga practice, but then looking at underneath it, how do we heal? How do we integrate?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great question. That's like the $100,000 question. But I think healing is integration, as you said, the word right there, integration of all of these different aspects of ourself. So whether you're looking at maybe internal family systems and inviting in all the parts of your psyche and your protector parts and the places that are wounded and defended, or whether you're looking at in health, looking at, physical health, a really holistic perspective where we have to recognize that we live in a world that's been shaped in a very, the Descartesian split philosophically of mind and body are separate. And when that happened, all of the systems that we're educated in and our medical, education and even science is very focused on this materialistic worldview that we have to see it, we have to be able to measure it. You can even hear it in sort of all the bro tech, longevity podcasts that are out there, this over indexing on hard science. And I love hard science, and I think it's really important. The data, is there. And that's what's so great is like, whether it's quantum physics or psychedelics or even nutrition or the microbiome, mycelium, we're now understanding what ancient cultures have known really from the beginning of time, that we're all connected. It's all one big giant system. We're all part of the same living organism of life force. And for healing to happen, we have to address it on a bigger systemic level. And so it's a really exciting time in health and longevity that we're seeing this happen in nutrition. We're seeing it happen in psychology and the integration, understanding the mind and body, the nervous system regulation, all of these pieces that are really, so kind of trendy right now it is the weave, it is the integration. So
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And that's the work I do. Well, for years I was a chaplain at our level 1 trauma hospital and then a hospice chaplain, but now I have a private practice, but I work closely with Dr. Greg Plotnikoff in his clinic, and he's well known nationwide as an integrative doctor. And he has also, if you can believe it, a doctor and a master's in divinity. So he gets like the whole person healing. It's all the pieces. So it just, because that's how, it's all connected, how we heal. Every piece of it, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and the soul. And is the soul at peace? And how do you
Yes.
live from your soul? And what does that look like?
Yes, I love that you say this, because this is why Noah must have put us in touch, because he's like, you guys are on the same channel.
Yeah.
When I think of my work boiled down into a nutshell, it really is helping people lead from their soul and connect to their soul. And in yoga, one of the words in Sanskrit is Atman. And that means, the individual soul, but it's connected to the Brahman, the infinite soul. And so we're like one molecule of water connected in the same substance as this whole ocean of consciousness. And so when we can do that work, and it really is a discipline at this day and age with the attention economy and all the distraction, it's a discipline to stay connected and to have practices that keep you really anchored every single day in your soul, and then to listen to, and now again, we have bio-individual medicine, and we're understanding the importance of tailoring everything to the individual. And so that's the tailoring your life to your soul and letting your life be soul led. And it's a winding path, and it's the most thrilling path, right? But I also say, we can't have healing on one level, physically, for example, a diagnosis, if we don't get to the root, the emotional and spiritual root. And we can't have, sort of the mental or emotional healing if we're not also setting up the body for success. We know that things like the hormones or inflammation are directly affecting our thought forms and even our emotional responses. Things like our trauma responses are then affecting our neuroimmunology. So yeah, so it's whole person healing, and I think it's really important that we start reframing healthcare as a team of health experts. And so you have your mental emotional health expert, your different physicians and their expertise, hopefully some sort of spiritual guide or practice or teachings or teacher that are really supporting you on all levels.
Oh, I'm right there with you, because my passion is, how do you live from your heart? I think it's the doorway to your soul, your essence. That's who we are. And the language, I've worked with thousands of people of it. Is it God, Brahma, Allah, energy, true nature, universal intelligence? I mean, it goes on, and it just, I'm at the point where there isn't even language. There isn't language. So, but tuning in, am I living? And I think so much of the world, it's easy to live in your mind, head up, your mind runs you, but then how do you come into your body, your heart, your soul, the guidance? It's all there if we can listen and be quiet and still and tune in. There it is.
Yeah.
All the answers.
Exactly. And most of us were not taught or conditioned in that way. And so for many of us, it's a re-education, and it can even feel vulnerable or scary to connect with what might be more tender or vulnerable places in ourselves. And yet we know that's where our superpowers live, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned this when I was 11 years old, when I was on the brink of life and death, cancer diagnosis at 11, and in the 70s, and no one talked to me, and that's part of my story. And faith meant nothing, but it just opening to, like, oh, I want to live, and praying to live, and then feeling this just peace pour through my body, and a knowing that connection with the divine, the universe, happened at 11, and I've been contemplating earth and why are we here and life, and feeling that ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. What a powerful story. What a powerful Shakti, your
Yeah.
journey to have that clarity and, luminosity at 11 years old. That's
11 it started.
beautiful.
Yep. And started voraciously reading.
Yeah.
And one of my mentors has been Ram Dass. And I know in some of your work you've referenced Ram Dass. That was so delightful. And you actually worked directly with Ram Dass.
He's absolutely one of my greatest teachers. When I found yoga, I was very blessed to have an incredible teacher. His name is Govindas, and dear friend and soulmate brother. And he took me to my first power yoga class with Brian Kest in Santa Monica. And then he handed me the same week, a cassette tape, which dates me, but a cassette tape of Ram Dass called Dying into Life, and then Krishna Das's first CD. So I was really, from the very beginning, with yoga, oriented to the strong physical, the deep spiritual, and then the psychology and even psychedelics with Ram Dass. And so then I did meet him a couple of times. I, was in audience with him in retreats. And then I went to actually go see him when he was in Maui, just sit at his bedside, which was such a privilege and such an honor. Just him and I sitting there. I mean, I think I only got one picture, but it was enough. And yeah, it was after his stroke, and it was 2006. And so he was so gracious, so gracious to even see me. And yeah, but he's been absolutely my greatest teacher, for sure.
And I think a distillation, I've read everything of his, and, for long, 40 years. But just, be here now. It's exactly what we're talking about. Living from your soul. How do you drop into your essence, and why are you here, and living from there?
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that Ram Dass brings, is the depth, but then also the levity and the humor, and the not taking yourself so seriously, and the play of life.
Holding all of life, the good, the bad, all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to what you had shared, you went through Dark Night of the Soul. Can you share a little bit about that? What happened? What was that like?
Well, I had my daughter at 46 years old, and it was a wonderful IVF miracle baby. And then
Congratulations.
thank you. Yes, it was such an incredible journey. And I hadn't really thought of, I was so focused on the fertility journey that I had, no space at all. And I didn't even want to be, of course, in perimenopause because I was trying to have a baby. And so then I breastfed her for 2 years, which was all good. And, I was in that postpartum recovery. And then basically, as soon as I stopped breastfeeding her, my hormones just completely bottomed out. And I did not prepare for it. I had no one, counseling me to prepare for it. So I was 48 at that time and launched into a very deep, significant symptoms, mostly mental health. I did have physical symptoms, but most of my symptoms were mental health, depression, anxiety, loss of confidence, loss of agency, ambition. And so I really lost my sense of self and I was unmoored kind of in the world. And then I was carrying both new motherhood and perimenopause, and we had moved and built a house, and I just got completely burnt out in my career. And it took me a good year or two to get on hormones. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of menopause hormone therapy, hormone replacement therapy. It's not for everyone, but it's a really important conversation to have. So that took me like a year to get on hormones. And that while that stabilized me hormonally, physically, I realized also as a therapist, and particularly depth psychology, Jungian psychology, shadow work, I realized that there was still so much coming up for me around midlife, around aging, around, having a young child, and still having to do the deeper inner work of mental health. There's a term in psychology called no pills without skills. And I love that concept of, we're not just taking something and thinking that's going to do the trick. We want to support ourselves, whether it's hormones or medicine or pharmaceuticals, whatever. But we also need to address the underlying issues, whether that's nutrition, exercise. In psychology, maybe it's core wounds, inner child work, healing, trauma. And so I realized that while the hormones were great, they weren't the only answer. And when I started doing my own research and getting oriented to all of the education online, I saw that most of it was a very Western, over-medicalized, almost pathological approach to menopause. Like, it's decline, it's bad, A, B, C, and D is going to happen, and just get on hormone therapy, eat protein, lift weights, and you're good, And for me, it was a much bigger conversation. I'm oriented to the soul, and I'm oriented to the journey of our psyche in our lifetime, and the deeper underlying issues and challenges. So things like my own internalized ageism and how I was resisting. I was in denial that I was in perimenopause, which, by the way, isn't that uncommon. It's pretty common. Or really working through the deeper issues and challenges in my relationship, and the challenges that come with having lower sex drive, and just feeling, how do we heal these? Like, how do we really acknowledge these and keep reclaiming this for ourselves? And who am I now? Because I had noticed a huge shift in my identity, my sense of self, again, my orientation to work and ambition, much less ego driven. And so I launched my 6-week metamorphosis program, and that's inside of my membership to really support women, as I say, on this 360-degree journey of menopause, because we need sacred spaces. We need temple spaces. We need spaces where we can go and really retreat. It's one of our biggest jobs in the menopausal transition is to carve out the time and space that we need to just be with ourselves. And as women, especially, we're caregivers, and most of us have been very oriented to the other throughout our lifetime, whether that's career or partnership or children. And menopause, I say, is really a reckoning. And it's a threshold where it's a time to turn that energy and those antenna inwards and pour into ourselves. And then it takes time. The menopausal transition is several years long, and we really need that time to, take the pressure off of ourselves, let ourselves be, as we talked about earlier, soul led, connect with our soul, and then see who we are becoming and what wants to come out the other side, because it's probably pretty different than who we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you know?
Thank you for sharing that. And just having a baby, my kids, I had them when I was 29 and early
Yeah.
30s, and that was life changing. I mean, your whole world shifts, not only your body, but everything shifts. So,
Yeah.
but what I'm hearing with what you're just sharing is reminds me of just the depth of healing. The healing, it happens on all these levels, and it brings up, if you're willing to, takes courage, look inward of how do we keep healing pieces maybe that are unhealed from family of origin or attachment or issues come up to be healed. And are you willing to do the healing work? Not always easy, but wow, when you look inward, when you release what's been held, for example, somatically in our body from way back, from early childhood, it's just so life-giving and transforming.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really actually want to coin the term postpartum perimenopause, because there is such a big sector of us that had children later, even 35. Many women are experiencing perimenopause at 35. So that's a easily, 35 to 45. There's a lot of women having babies and overlapping. But yeah, I had that sort of compound effect of like orienting to motherhood and matrescence and how everything in your world changes. And on top of that, going through perimenopause, so it was really condensed and compressed. Who am I? Where am I in this? How do I relate to the world? And just feeling extremely overwhelmed with all of it. Yeah, you're right. I think there's unique, there's of course, and not to keep it binary, but the difference in the psyche and the journey of a woman and a man, and again, all genders, but women when we go through the process of both menstruation, going through puberty into that maiden energy, and then matrescence, motherhood, and that could be a career or a big creative project too. It doesn't have to be childbirth. But that's a huge piece. And, if that's earlier, you have a few decades to go through that. And then the big shift in menopause, which I actually think in many ways is the biggest shift of moving into, and I don't even think many of us are in yet the crone years or quite orient to that yet. I think it's maybe this, like, I'm working with the archetype of the sovereign queen and really sitting in your own sovereignty, and that unplugging from the male gaze and unplugging from that orientation to just being a sexual object or viewed and valued in that way, and to really like, who is this, being, and what am I here to give, and how do I really want to serve, right? But those three in particular, that trinity, those are huge thresholds of initiation. And I think we're finally starting to give the due that we need to postpartum and understand, like, the fourth trimester, and matrescence is a years-long journey in and of itself. And also, of course, for fathers, and again, all genders. But then now we're starting to turn the attention to menopause and understand that, oh, okay, we need to give ourselves some time and space for this exploration, if we can, ideally.
I really appreciate you sharing the breakout of all that. I mean, what I'm hearing is, how do we keep finding empowerment, wisdom, coming into who we are in each journey as a woman, but also for any men listening. It's like, how do you keep coming into who you are, why you're here, what you're called to do and be, and yeah, living from your soul. And it's a healing journey. And I'll share for everyone listening, just, it's healing. It's ongoing. It doesn't stop. And so, yes, we're talking about women and the flow through all these different transitions, but you get into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So many of the people I work with in my private practice are in that age range and ready, finally, like, I'm tired of feeling anxiety or fear or worry, or I feel like I'm stuck, to just decide, okay, how can I heal? And what does that look like? And yeah, it's a journey to look inward for all of us. And the power, when we're willing to look inward, when we have that unease in our body, even to stop, to notice it, awareness, to breathe, to feel it, because feelings, we know, they come, they go. But when you really can breathe into it, it's like, letting it out. If it's crying, yelling, screaming, it's just like, oh, wow, there's the spaciousness. There, I'm more fully me now. It's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's almost even there is no destination, right? It's just the becoming. And so there I don't even think there's a place where we get to where all of a sudden we're healed and then everything is fine. It's like we're in then we're launched into another spiral of becoming, whatever that is. And so it's sort of a reshaping of the narrative of the journey is the destination, and how do we invite in the most harmonious or balanced or sattvic state, thriving state of health and vitality. And that's going to be maybe a little different for everyone, but where we can feel really empowered and have that self-trust and trust in the universe, like whatever's happening, this is part of my, this is one of Ram Dass's quotes that I just love so much. Your life is your curriculum. And whatever's happening in your life is the next lesson in the book, on the next page of the book, whatever is
Yeah, I
happening.
love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really coming into, yes, your essence, the being, your being here now, and with all there is to drop into what does it really mean to be here and alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm aware that from your work that you've worked with ayahuasca and mentioned that that was powerful in your journey. Can you share with us people listening, what that was like for you?
Yeah, psychedelics have been honestly, I definitely think that they've been the greatest teacher for me. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about working in this field, that I found psychedelics in my early 20s at the same time that I found yoga, and had some incredibly life-changing experiences mostly with psilocybin at that time, with mushrooms. And then shortly after that, I found ayahuasca back in, again, 2005, 2006, so 20 years ago. And luckily just found some incredible teachers. And one of my teachers, who's one of my dearest friends, was in Peru at the time. And so then I started bringing him to the United States, and we were doing circles, and then we would go down. I led 3 different retreats down to Peru and did shamanic yoga pilgrimages down there, working with the medicine. And of course, it's optional for anyone, but it's a really powerful tool to then layer in with all of the frameworks that I use in, like, the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, shadow work, of course, woven with the yoga and helping to support the somatic releases and energetic and connect to the soul on a more spiritual level. And I also used to run a whole priestess mystery school. So I do a lot with ritual and bringing in divine feminine spirituality and archetypes. And so weaving all of that into a retreat and using ayahuasca as one of the tools. And we would do 2 different ceremonies in that week-long journey. I think I'm going to start doing it again, maybe an annual trip, because it's like a crown jewel, especially it's a big trip, but going to the Sacred Valley in Peru and really being in the land itself is so powerful. So that was part of it. I've worked with ayahuasca quite consistently over the last 20 years. And entheogens, plant medicine, psychotropic plant medicines, are considered a food that open the third eye center, the 6th chakra. So there are different foods associated with each chakra. And the food associated with the third eye, ajna, is entheogens. And so many, many cultures, of course, around the world, indigenous cultures, have been using different plant medicines, or, maybe the toad, 5-MeO, for thousands of years, and known that this is a tool to expand our consciousness, to see things from a different perspective, maybe even to connect with different realms of possibility and spiritual, truths or entities, depending on your, worldview. But they're really powerful. And again, of course, with Ram Dass, there was a huge movement and the initial awakening of this in the 1950s and 60s. And then it was pushed underground with the war on drugs. And we really lost like 30 years of scientific research on psychedelics, and not to mention the criminalized the ripple effect from the criminalization. And luckily now we're in this renaissance. And so, yeah, I still love working with ayahuasca. I love the ritual. One of the things that I love about ayahuasca is the music. And, usually you're with musicians and there's live music and song. Not always, people have different styles, but music and sound and singing and ritual and group, being in a group and being witnessed and being supported and being held, all of those are very powerful tools for the healing of psyche. And those are all tools that we have been very divorced and disconnected from in our culture, especially in the West and especially in America. So it's really important that we recognize our, mental health crisis is not about the individual. It's not really about, you can't separate the individual from the culture. And our culture is sick. Our culture has, again, over-indexed on dividing and conquering, creating this individualistic ethos, and we thrive as a community and we thrive together. And so we need to start replacing those building blocks of community and ritual and music and song and nature and all of these different ways that from the beginning of time, all cultures, these are their healing tools. They know if someone is grieving or if someone has died or if there's a trauma, they come together, they circle around the fire, different people are responsible for different things. There's a big weave, and that person knows that they're not alone, but they're held. And we don't have those systems in our culture, and we have to rebuild those. And it's happening. The internet is actually part of that, but it's also part of the problem as well. So yeah, that's ayahuasca. Now I'm working a lot more with both psilocybin and MDMA, and I'm working with a biotech company on their psilocybin derivative and working as a session monitor in phase 3 trials for the FDA. So it's really exciting to be involved in the clinical and scientific arm, as well as, all the experience that I've had anecdotally in my life.
That's fascinating. Well, the government and they're starting to say, as it relates to the loneliness epidemic that we're all in, that the number one antidote is community and being with one another. So that's exciting. I'd love to hear from you if you're willing to share maybe a top experience you had, a peak experience taking ayahuasca. I mean, for you, like, how did it help you drop into your soul, your essence? So I think you might be willing to share.
Yeah, there's two that come up right away. And the first is that for years, for decades, my number one prayer was to become a mother and to have a child. And so thank you for this question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I love this. And so every sweat lodge, every yoga class, every retreat, every ayahuasca ceremony, I was constantly in prayer to spirit. Part of it was I hadn't found my partner, and I was just praying to find my partner. And then I found a great partner, but he wasn't ready to have kids and do IVF. And so, I really was praying for, to have a family. I did freeze my eggs early. And so luckily, because that was one of them. So any of the women out there, like, definitely consider freezing your eggs if you know you want to have a child. Earlier, the better,
Yep. Amen. I agree with that.
4:35. I like to really educate, because no one educated me on this. And anyway, I was just praying so hard for my partner and my child. And then I still didn't have, or maybe I did have my partner at that time. I was in an ayahuasca ceremony, and there's another medicine that we work with called hape, which is a tobacco snuff, and it's a beautiful medicine to layer into the ayahuasca. And I was out under the stars. We were in Ojai with one of my dearest soul brothers, and he was administering this hape, and he knew, my journey, my story. And I knew that we were getting ready to unfreeze the eggs and make embryos and, go on that journey. And so I was just praying so hard that this spirit baby, would come through, and calling her in. And, so we were out under the stars, and I think he said, like, what's your intention? And I just could feel so strongly. I was looking up at the sky, it was the middle of the night, just sent this prayer straight into the heart of the universe. Like, I am calling in my spirit baby, wherever she is in the universe. Like, I am your mother. I am whoever, whatever spirit I am meant to parent, I'm calling them in. And we did this hape, and I had said the prayer, and it was like I could just feel it land. And one of the benefits of hape is that it really grounds you in your body, and you can really feel like light consciousness anchored in your body. And I just felt like that prayer got through to the heart of the universe. And to this day, I feel like I tell my daughter, I'm like, the universe got that prayer. And then it was a year or two later that I had my daughter. And then the second thing that comes to my mind is I did an ayahuasca ceremony a couple of years ago, and I I ended up having a belly birth. I don't like to use the term cesarean because it's named after a man. And it's really important that we adapt our lexicon now to be empowered, you know? And so anyway, it wasn't an emergency, but I did end up in a belly birth, and it was quite traumatic in the recovery and really painful. And I just didn't, again, people aren't really talking that much about the level of trauma that mothers can go through in childbirth and the babies too. So anyway, I knew that I had some work to do around healing the scar and the scar tissue and just feeling really disconnected from my womb after that birth. And I hadn't really taken it on and done, a lot of conscious healing work around it. And I was in this ceremony, and again, I went out and I did a hape, and it was a full moon also. And this time I was inside, but I scooted over to where the full moon was shining, pouring in on me in this window. And after the hape, because hape can kind of activate the ayahuasca and even help you purge. So I was purging, and then I was weeping, and then I was like, wow, I don't really know what this is. And then all of a sudden I realized I was holding my belly, and I was like, oh, I'm really healing some grief and some trauma around this belly birth. And I was kind of massaging my scar. And then I started having these, and I was praying to the moon, like the lunar energy and the feminine, and please help me heal, in my womb. And as I was doing that, I had the thought like, oh, maybe I should go see who's doing a womb healing class online and sign up for that, or, read a book about healing from a cesarean, a belly birth. And then I realized, I was like, no, this is it. You are healing yourself right now. You already know. You are actually doing it in this very moment. So then I was just noticing and witnessing how our mind does that, where we think we need to look outside of ourselves for the answer instead of, this is it. Just massage, be with yourself, have the tears, let it release and cry, whatever's coming through. Your body knows how to do this. Your psyche knows how to do this. You're doing it right now. And then I was like laughing, at myself. So those are the two that were really acute and very clear. Like, this is a clear healing and medicine and aha moment that I was having. So those are two highlights for sure.
Thank you for sharing really powerful experiences of like just dropping in deeply into your soul calling your daughter in, but then the healing, your bodily healing, and letting that out.
Yeah, I think for me, that's one of the greatest, for me, the doorway of ayahuasca, and all the medicines are different. They have different attributes and benefits, and psilocybin can be quite similar, but they are really plugging me into my soul. And I come out of there like, okay, I'm realigned. I know who the I, beyond the I of me is. And I have had a felt experience of that. And it's a combination. It's a combination of the medicine and the music and the people and being witnessed and the ritual, and being in nature, like all of those weave together to kind of shed the persona and all of the thinking mind that we're walking around with, so that we can really come back to that pure essence. Yeah.
And that's what I've heard. I've heard this from friends who've done ayahuasca, colleagues. I have not done ayahuasca. I'm not, I'll kind of open if the spirit moves me, but I already
Yeah.
get so much. I see spirits daily. I see angels. I get so
Yeah.
much guidance. I'm like, not knowing, like, I want
Yeah.
more.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So for you and your journey, what would you say? How would you define your faith? Do you putting language around it? I'm sensing you believe in energy, but can you share with listeners
Yeah,
what does that mean for you?
yeah, it's a great question. I mean, ultimately, I think, the ultimate is just surrender to the great mystery. Like, we don't actually really know. Nobody actually really knows what happens when we die. And we have a lot of, I think it kind of falls in line with Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell's work of the mono myth, where all different cultures have different iterations and different characterizations and mythology around what that thing is. And I don't think it's so important what the thing is. I do think there's a life force, the universe, nature. My mom actually gave me this analogy from one of her teachers many, like 40 years ago, saying that it's like when you walk into a great cathedral like Notre Dame or any of the great cathedrals, and you're walking through the corridors, and the sun is shining outside and it's pouring in through all these different stained glass windows. They all might have different stories depicted on them, and snapshots of mythology, and depending on where you stand, you're seeing that light in a totally different prism, and then you walk over here and you're seeing it in a totally different frame. And the light is spirit, is the God, goddess of your own understanding. And depending on maybe where you were born, or when you were born, or to whom you were born, that light is going to look different, and it's going to be filtered through a different story and frame, but it's all the same light. And I love that. And so, yoga, I think, is somewhat neutral in that there's this greater, the Brahman, the infinite, and then we are, made of that. The Atman is that, similar to, the story of Jesus and God, and that he is, made in the flesh, of God. And so are we, right? The children of God. And so I think that, we are nature. We are the cosmos. And as much as I can help people keep plugging in, and help myself keep remembering, I am the stars spinning. I am the seasons turning. I am nature revealing herself. We're not separate than nature. It's the architecture of the mind that keeps us separate, but who we are is it. And so there's also a real practice of deepening inward. And I have to say, I don't think I'm great at it. I think I'm a very, newbie, and just beginning to, I don't even think I have much of a concept. It's that challenging, I think, for human beings, for most of us, to not get so hooked in our daily life that we can really stay in this fluid, like the sacred is the mundane and the mundane is the sacred, and elevate our lives to this holy, majestic experience. And yet here we are having to make ends meet and get the kid to school, and it's all of it. And so, yeah, I mean, I grew up Christian. I love Christianity. I actually just was thinking about starting to take my daughter to church and just give her that framework as well. But yoga is a huge, it's probably maybe what I orient to the most. But then also, psychedelics and opening to, I really appreciate all archetypes and all, mythologies. I think they're all relevant.
Thank you for sharing that analogy. I love it. And I mean, it's research based on where you are born, where you live, really does relate to more. Are you Christian? Are you Hindu? Are you Buddhist? Or
Mhm.
but when
Yeah.
you really look at even just faith traditions, what is it? 1 out of 4 people in the world are Christian. I mean, it just, yeah. And there's such a breadth and depth of language and what's used, but just that we are that eternal essence, that spark, whatever kind of language you want to put around what that is for every one of us. And take this with a grain of salt. but from my years working as a chaplain and being with so much end of life, I saw hundreds and hundreds of people die in front of me and could sense and see their spirit come out of their body, their spirit come back and see me. So in my opinion, death is not an end. We transform. I can't go farther, but yeah, we're
Yeah.
eternal. We are eternal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
So in your daily life, do you have a particular practice that is just a go-to every day, no matter what, that really fills your heart, your soul, your spirit? I mean, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's meditation or prayer, or I'm just for our listeners, is there one particular or practice that you will not do? I mean, that's part of your life always.
I wish I could say I was that consistent and disciplined that there's something I did every day, but there's not. The few things that really keep me grounded are definitely meditation, and that's something I even want to deepen much more. Meditation and slash prayer, I weave that in, and gratitude for sure, something I can work on, and getting into my body. So it's not always yoga. Often it's walking up and down through the hills here in Los Angeles. But getting in my body is really important. I mean, I think the number one tool for me, and that I would offer to anyone listening, is the breath. The breath is the breath of life. So we know that every single one of us, we come in on an inhale and we leave on an exhale. And so the breath is literally the currency of our life force. And you can have a body, as you just said, and it's not alive anymore. And there's no soul in that body. So the breath is what connects you to the soul. And when the breath is gone, the soul is gone. And I witnessed my father, passing away very beautifully 6 years ago. And, that is just such a profound and humbling experience. And one moment the soul is there, and the next moment it's clearly not. And so the number one tool, and this is great because it's free and it's so accessible because it's always with you. The breath is always with you. And so all you have to do is turn your attention to the breath. And so I like to give people a little piece of homework takeaway of any time you think of it as much as you can during the day, insert a moment of pause and take 3 conscious breaths. And that's like 4 counts in minimum, maybe 6, maybe 8, 4 counts out. And so when you get in your car, before, maybe you start your car, but before you put it into drive and start driving, just take 3 deep breaths, even with your kids in the car, even with your partner. Before you pick up the phone when someone's calling, just take 3 deep breaths. Feel yourself grounding into your body and remember your soul. Like, remember who you are, because your soul is unique, right? And you're in this unique body and mind. And so really it's an honoring and an inviting. We say to your point about the spirituality, the roots of Latin inspiration, which in French means to inhale, is to be filled with spirit. Inspire, right? Inspiration and expiration. So to be filled with spirit, to feel yourself being filled with the Holy Spirit, whatever that is for you. And then attuning to that throughout your day. So you remember, oh, I'm not Ashley, therapist, yoga teacher, whatever. I'm a spirit here having an experience. And so that moment of pause, as much as you can insert it through your day, can radically shift your perception and your whole reality. And it can be so simple and free.
Beautifully said. I love it. Thank you. I mean, as like you, I'll feel just my lower abdomen expand and then recede, and it just brings me down into my body. It's like, oh, here I am.
Yeah,
really,
and of course,
really powerful.
The nervous system regulation, the toning your vagus nerve. Like, there's so many ripple effects, downstream effects of deep belly breathing, but the psychological one is impactful as well, and spiritual.
Yep, for healing, mind, body, spirit, everything. Yeah. And like you, I was with my father. I was the only one in the room when he took his last breath, and it was magical. This was 20 years ago, and this energy came in the room. I could feel it. And then my father became conscious and looked at me and breathed out. There wasn't one speck of fear. It was just like, it was so beautiful. He breathed out and then left his body.
Yeah.
Stunning.
So stunning. Yeah.
Well, I want to be mindful of our time. We could talk another couple hours. We're just on the same page. I really resonate with everything you're sharing. Mm-hmm. I end my podcast by asking, what is awakening? What does awakening mean to you?
I love that. I've really been resonating with that word a lot, awaken. And I think it's interesting because even in a nutshell with my work, I feel like it's to awaken people. And I've kind of synthesized it down to that very word, awakening to who you really are, awakening to everything we've just been talking about, that you are spirit having this holy experience, that you are the center of the universe in the sense of like, you can, the energy that you're carrying and that you're radiating out is creating what's coming back to you, right? So how do you, and it really is, and that's why I love yoga, because it's got such a clear discipline of practices to put into place to train your mind, to train your body and your emotions to stay, in that center and to stay connected with spirit, whatever that version of spirit is. And so then it's also awakening to the holiness of other people and awakening to the holiness of your life, and your life is your curriculum. It's really hard when, some curveball is thrown at you, a diagnosis or, financial or whatever. And how do you choose to show up? And how do you, and I love the word training, like we're training ourselves how to show up. And it takes practice to stay patient or compassionate or loving or, creative, whatever it is. So it's awakening to your spirit and magic. I mean, it's really awe-inspiring. That's why it's so powerful to be with kids or animals, because it reminds us, like, this is such an ephemeral, like mind-boggling reality that we're living in. Like just the leaf falling, like seasons changing, the most simple mundane things are actually beyond our ability to even conceive of, so really waking up to the awe of what we're living right now.
Absolutely beautiful. And the word that comes to me with what you just said was just opening, being open.
I love
to
that.
all of life.
Yeah, receiving.
Yeah, receiving. Well, you are a blessing. You have a big light around you. You're just a powerful healer. So thank you so much for coming on my show. Tell the listeners how they can find you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. It's such an honor. So resonant. Probably the easiest way is just Instagram on my link in bio. Like all my links are there. I have a Haven membership, which is a monthly membership, spiritual yoga, holistic mental health. And then I have my menopause metamorphosis 6-week journey that we go on many times a year. And then therapy and psychedelic therapy and retreats. So all of those can be found on the link in my bio on Instagram, which is Ashley Turner and the number 1.
Terrific. Well, a delight to meet you today and love to talk more. We'll have to have another episode at some point. Delightful to meet you.
Thank you so much. Such an honor.
Thank you so much for joining Everyday Awakening. Let's keep the conversation going online. You can follow me on Instagram at Catherine Duncan, MABCC. And to keep up to date on the show, subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. I'd love to hear from you.